Awesome. Alrighty, so welcome everyone. Where we're going to pick up is on page 13. Now, we went through some of the paragraphs on page 13, but I just think page 13 contains a lot of very vital and important information. So what we're going to do is we're just going to do some review, and I'm going to reread and re-explain, and we're going to rock and roll with it. So what happens is Bill Wilson on page 8, he has his step one experience where he comes to the end of himself. He sees that he is going to drink again. He sees that he's absolutely hopeless. Then he drinks again because I cannot stay sober on a step one experience. On page 12, what happens between page 8 and page 12 is his old friend, Ebby Thatcher, Throckmorton, shows up. And Ebby Thatcher gives him knowledge of what our solution is and what our program of action is. And what we see Bill Wilson do is we see him wrestle with this idea of God. We see him push and pull and fight this idea of a power greater than himself. And I'm sure none of us can relate to that even a little bit. We've all been there. And on page 12, what we see is Bill Wilson take his second step. And we see it when it says it was only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself. Nothing more was required of me to make my beginning. And he says, I saw that growth could start from that point. Upon a foundation of complete willingness, I might build what I saw in my friend. Would I have it? Of course I would. So that right there is Bill Wilson's second step. He believes that there could be a power greater than himself. He believes that that is possible. And then he believes that that power could restore him to sanity. What he saw in his friend was the spiritual awakening. There was a light on in his eyes. There was a hope in his spirit. And when he passed him some gin, he said, no, thank you. He was sober. And he believed that that was possible for him. So on page 18, it says at the hospital, page 13, one page at a time. At the hospital, I was separated from alcohol for the last time. Treatment seemed wise, for I showed signs of delirium tremens. So he goes into the hospital December 11th of 1934, and his sobriety date would be December 12th, 1934. And then what we're going to see Bill Wilson do is take the course of action that later became our 12 steps. And that's why I'm reiterating some of this stuff, because oh, this is important. This is the course of action that I got to take. So it says there, I humbly offered myself to God as I then understood him. And something I'm going to point out in my 1930s dictionary. So I don't know about other people's because I only have mine. But in my 1930s dictionary, understand, one of the definitions of understand is to know through experience. So when it talks about God as I understood him, what we are talking about, sometimes we in the rooms understand God. How could I understand this power? It is a power that I am coming to know through experience. And the experience is that of the 12 steps. So there I humbly offered myself to God as I then understood him, to do with me as he would. I placed myself unreservedly under his care and direction. I admitted for the first time that of myself I was nothing, that without him I was lost. And if you're writing in your book, and that is what the cool kids are doing, writing in their books, you can make a little note that is Bill. Actually, all the cool kids are just at the meeting. I'm glad you're here. You're all cool kids. No extra effort required to be a cool kid. You're here and you're cool. Love you lots. But what we can make a note is that is Bill Wilson's third step. And if you're looking for, and who wouldn't, if you're looking for secret, fun, fresh prayers, easy breezy, beautiful cover girl prayers. I don't know why that came to my mind. But if you're looking for sneaky prayers in the big book, here's one. And I call it the Bill Wilson third step prayer. God, I humbly offer myself to you, to do with me as you would. I place myself unreservedly under your care and direction. I admit that of myself I am nothing, that without you I am lost. What a beautiful prayer to take into your day. What a beautiful prayer to take into that third step decision if you'd like. And he goes on to say, I ruthlessly faced my sins and became willing to have my newfound capital F friend take them away root and branch. I have not had a drink since. My schoolmate visited me, and I fully acquainted him with my problems and deficiencies. And in there, we see a 4 through 7. It's a little out of the order that we normally would do it. But when it talks about facing his sins, now we might see that word sin and we might have a lot of religious connotation or a lot of, baggage with that word. When we see that word, what we can do is what that word means is anything that is cutting me off from that power which is God, anything that's blocking me from God. But because what are we talking about? Defects of character. We're talking about shortcomings. We're really talking about the various manifestations of selfishness, self-centeredness. That's what we're talking about. But if even that kind of feels a little like, girl, I don't know, fair enough. Did you know in archery, the word sin simply means to miss the mark? And so if we got to throw in some archery, we can do that. Some of us will need some adult supervision if we're going to do anything related to archery. Eyes on you. You be careful. There's some sharp objects, And then I love that it is my newfound capital F friend. When we see words that are capitalized, what we're talking about is words that are synonyms for God, or pointing to that same idea of a power greater than ourselves. That's what we're talking about. And it is God that is taking away our defects. Root and branch, which is the second plant-based metaphor on as many pages. And I spoke about it last week, so I won't go too much into it this week, but that idea of root and branch. The root is the bottom, the depth of the plant. The branch is what's reaching out that we see all of it. We're asking this power to take all of it from us. And doesn't that sound like a 6 and 7? Became willing and asking for God to take it away, root and branch. And then when Ebby Thatcher, my boy, Throckmorton, you'll see him behind Rob's head. Ebby, what up? So with that, it's he fully acquainted him with his problems and deficiencies. Well, that sounds like a 5th step, right? And so what we see is that 4 through 7, but it's more a 4, 6, 7, 5, not how we would normally do it, but we see that 4 through 7. Then he says, we made a list of people I had hurt or toward whom I felt resentment. I expressed my entire willingness to approach these individuals admitting my wrong. Never was I to be critical of them. I was to write all such matters to the utmost of my ability. When he makes that list, that is his step 8 list. And when he actually goes out to write such matters to the best of his ability, that is his 9th step. So that's what we're talking about there. Now, this next paragraph is step 11. It says, I was to test my thinking by the new God consciousness within. Now, this is a bit of an etymology tangent that I will absolutely be taking us on later on. But just real quick, real sneaky little jaunt into etymology. The word conscience, it's Latin in origin. And its Latin roots means with knowing. So the God with knowing within. I was to test the God presence within. That's what we're talking about. It says common sense would thus become uncommon sense. Because I'll throw this out. For those of you who've been doing 12-step for a while, or for those of you that are recovered, have you ever taken like a problem or a situation to somebody that is not recovered, to somebody that is not living in the 4th dimension? By the way, that is not that I am better than anyone. That is not what we're saying. But if you want to go and you want to complain about your spouse, there are people that will be like, yeah, what a jerk, or like, yeah, you should rip that person off, right? There are ways in which we live our life which seem like common sense. But do you know what is uncommon sense for a silly little drunk like me? Making amends, looking at where I have caused harm, asking people about what would be best for them, considering that, and then doing that. I mean, any sort of basic level of communication, that's a radical idea that did not exist before I got here. You know what I'm saying? And it says, I was to sit quietly when in doubt. And I got some news. Sitting quietly is meditation. So what we're talking about is meditation. And some of you guys who have been coming to a lot of the studies I've been doing lately are like, oh, we have heard about this. I got a couple of hills that I will absolutely not die on. I'm nowhere near that hill. Do not want to die on it. I'll be in the valley. I'll hit a plateau, maybe a mesa, but I'm not on that hill. I'm not dying on that one. But there are some hills that I will absolutely die upon. One of the hills is that you can recover. Yep, you can recover. Dying on that hill, you can get well. Heck yeah, that's the hill I'm dying on. One of the other hills, 2 out of 3 that I'm dying on, is that idea that meditation did mean meditation. It did. There were a variety of meditative practices that existed up into, including, and in the 1930s. So unfortunately, meditation means meditation. So you're going to have to meditate. Pew pew. If you want, don't listen to me, you do you, but I hear it's what all the cool kids are doing. All the cool kids meditate, see? Yeah. You can tell who's meditating, because who was like, yeah, and who was not meditating was like, that's not cool, Paige. I'm just teasing. Alrighty, so I was to sit quietly when in doubt, asking. And anytime I see ask, or we ask, or to ask, what that is a prayer. Oh, girl, there's a whole other sneaky little prayer on page 13. Who knew? Delightful. So asking only for direction and strength to meet my problems as he would have me. So if you're looking for sneaky prayers, and I hear that's what the cool kids are doing, God, I ask for direction and strength to meet my problems as you would have me. What a beautiful prayer. Never was I to pray for myself, except as my requests bore on my usefulness to others. Then only might I expect to receive, but that would be in great measure. So I always want to contextualize, what does that mean? Because I know that you guys would never, but some of us can get into a little bit of black and white, all or nothing thinking. Oh, I can't pray for myself. You know, we overthink it a little. And I know none of you guys would ever do that, just me. So what are we talking about? I don't get to pray for my service pony. Do you know what I mean? God, I would like a pony so I can hop around and do service, like clip clop my service pony, and I can wear my like 12-step tiara and service sash and wave to the people on clip clop my pony. That's not what we're doing. Welcome, we're on page 13. Absolutely not. But what can I do? God, I pray that you would help me be patient, kind, tolerant, and loving to everyone that I see. God, I ask that you would take from me my desire to judge, to gossip, to criticize others. I pray that you would guide me and show me how I can be helpful to others. Parking spot. Do I need a pony parking spot? I don't need a pony parking spot. Oh, to pray? Yeah. Sorry, I got a message that was like parking spot. I'm like, no, I'm disabled. I have a handicapped parking spot. I don't need a special parking spot for my pony. We can just park my pony in the disabled spot, which is good because I need the room. Yeah, I know. So that's what I can do. And the more that I pray for others, or the more that I pray that God use me to be of use to others, that's when I receive. It really is when I'm relying upon God, I find that God is abundant. The more that I give love, tolerance, care, the more that I find that I receive that. So, and it goes on. Now where we're transitioning into is step 12. And we're beginning to dive into Bill Wilson and his 12-step experience. So it says, my friend promise. This is Ebby Thatcher, and this is a promise that is being made to Bill Wilson, but this promise is also being made to us. So I'll point that out in just a sec. My friend promised that when these things were done, not when these things were thoroughly talked about at a meeting, not when these things were contemplated, not when I did part of a 4-step and 1 and 2 amends. No, when these things were done, when I take rigorously this course of action, when these things were done, I did them, I would enter upon a new relationship with my Creator. And what we're talking about there is a spiritual awakening. And some of you guys that know me know that I am big on that relational view of God, because Not because I have any sort of religious orientation or connection, but because if you are in a relationship, you might be intimately familiar with the idea of the necessity of continued action, which is to say, Rob's married. You're going under the bus. Thank you. If Rob said I do to his wife and then didn't talk to her after that, I don't know how married they would be. Do you know what I'm saying? If he didn't listen to her, we know he does. If he does, like listen to her. If he didn't speak to her, it's helpful to listen a bit more than we speak. But if he didn't speak to her, if they didn't do things together, you know, when there's that unspoken awkwardness between you and another person, and those barriers between you and another person, if we don't clear that away, if we don't do things together, if we don't have communion, we aren't going to feel connected. And that is a really helpful view, because oftentimes when it's like, I don't feel connected to God, well, have I been doing anything to feel connected? God has not changed. God has not moved. Typically, what I have done is I have just ghosted God for 2 weeks, and I'm like, hey, I don't feel connected. I got to take some action to get connected. Also, I'm off on this tangent. I couldn't stay well on one drink. There wasn't a time in my life where I had one drink and I'm like, that is sufficient. I am done. Thank you. Oh, yes, one hoot of crack. Yes, I would like one hoot of crack, and I am good. No more for me. Thank you. No, that's not my experience. My experience is that I need more. And it's like that with the spiritual awakening, which, less, less me fiending for crack, but it is where I need more experiences. So, a new relationship with my creator. And it says that I would have the elements of a way of living. Oh man, you better underline that, because it's a way of life. Because if you weren't jiving with my I can't stay well on one metaphor, nor my getting married metaphor, that's fine. But it says right here, this is a way of life. This is not a set it and forget it deal. I've got to do this thing as a way of life. But here's the deal, which answered all my problems. And I want to emphasize something. Problems, not problem, problems, plural. See, what is the main problem that I have when I come here? My main problem is that I have the obsession of the mind. I have an allergy of the body. I cannot stop myself from going back to that substance or behavior that is ruining my life. But I come to find out I got some other problems, like selfishness, self-centeredness, resentments, fear. I got some bedevilments, which would be the spiritual malady. And if any of you are married or in a relationship, we will have some relationship problems, or not problems. This is a way of life which answers all my problems, which is a beautiful theme that we see. And this spiritual awakening is not just for, it's not like I treat my alcoholism over here and I treat my addiction over here. This is how I live all of my life. But that is a beautiful description of a spiritual awakening. Now it said, my friend promised. So Ebby Thatcher is promising Bill Wilson that if you do this, this will be the result. It is promised. Well, that same promise that Ebby's making to Bill is being made to us. Now, if you want to have a little big book bounce around, just real quick, let's pop over to page 60. Keep page 13 in mind. We're not going far. We're not going long. Page 60. And the reason I'm having a look at page 60 is because this is where it's written out in the book. Page 60 says, having had a spiritual awakening as the result. Yeah, you got it. Absolutely. The result of these steps. The result. So the result of these steps is a spiritual experience, a spiritual awakening. I take the actions, I get the results. We're going to see that in Bill's story. Spoilers. And that is why I was emphasizing and doing a bit of review with that. He took the actions that later became the steps and then had the results, not the other way around. So having had a spiritual awakening is the result. Having had, that is a promise. It's a promise. If I do this work to the best of my ability, I will get this result. It's promised. The same promise that is being made to Bill is being made to us, having had. And what is the only thing that it has to me to do to experience the spiritual awakening? The only thing is to work these 12 steps as a way of life. Like my life depends on it, because it does. I always sprinkle that in, because I think that's important. Because we can imagine, if I work a step a year, I'm not going to get that experience. You know what I mean? It's kind of like if I took a sip of alcohol and then let the ice begin to melt, and then maybe had another little. I'm not getting the results. I gotta go. I gotta work this like I was drinking it. You know what I mean? Go hard, get the result, go after it. So back to page 13. So my friend, I'm just going to reiterate so we have time. My friend promised that when these things were done, I have to do them, I would enter upon a new relationship with my capital C creator, that I would have the elements of a way of living which answered all my problems. This next sentence you can make a note is the essential requirements. This is what is essential for me to have this spiritual experience, to work these steps as a way of life. It says belief in the power of God, not even belief in God, belief in the power. What does it look like to have belief in the power of God? It means I am not gaslighting you. What that means is I'm not showing up to the meetings and gaslighting you on your experience. What that means is I'm believing the light that I see that is on in your eyes, the hope that is in your spirit, the joy that pervades you, the freedom that you have. I believe that that is possible and that exists. That's it. Belief in the power of God, plus enough willingness, honesty, and humility. And I just want to stop on willingness for a second, because I've been on this for a little bit. Willingness does not look like what I'd love to. I can't wait. Oh, yes, please. I inventory, delightful. Let me do it right away. We're on page 13, just about to flip over to the top of page 14. That's where my tangent got us. Delightful amends. I can't wait to make amends to my ex. I'd love to. Like willingness does not look like that. Willingness looks like I don't want to. I don't think it'll help. I'm absolutely afraid and doing it anyways. That is what willingness looks like. I just point that out because I've been finding it really helpful, because a lot of times we think willingness looks like, yay! It looks like absolutely not, but I'll do it anyways. That's what it looks like. So willingness plus willingness, honesty, humility, to establish and maintain the new order of things were the essential requirements. So what is essential? It's the belief in the power of God, willingness, honesty, and humility. Humility is the idea that I'm no better than you. I'm no worse than you. That we're equals. And I am dependent upon God. That is what humility is. So that is what is needed to establish and then maintain the new order of things. What is that? The new order is the spiritual awakening, living in that fourth dimension. That's what we're talking about. So I got to maintain it. I've got to keep it going. And if we weren't sure about that, we will see that from Bill's own experience, that one experience is not enough. Or just trying to stay sober on an old experience is not enough. Or even trying to stay well on an old experience is not enough. It's as simple, but not easy. The course of action that is laid out before us is simple. I see that I'm going to drink again. I see that a relapse is inevitable. I become willing to believe that there could be a power greater than myself, and that power could take from me the insane thought that I have to go back to the substance or addictive behavior that is destroying my life. I make a decision to do the work to get me to that solution. I write inventory. I share it with another person. I have a quiet hour. I become willing. I ask for God to take it away. I go make my amends. I continue that process on a daily basis in step 10 and in step 11. And I pray and I meditate and I share it with others. That is a simple course of action. It is a simple recipe. But all of it is ego smashing. And I don't know about your ego. My ego doesn't like to be smashed. Mine likes to be fed and pumped up and like, oh, look at me, you know. No, like not easy. All of these actions go against the natural grain of this alcoholic. You know, tree number 3, the grain is rough. Like, ooh, I'm not here for it. Like, it is not stuff we want to do. Simple but not easy. A price had to be paid. And there's a lot of times, especially around the holiday season, I talk about sobriety as a gift. And I mean that. It is a gift. I do not earn it. And not just sobriety, by the way, not just physical abstinence, but emotional sobriety. Emotional sobriety is the purpose of the 12 steps, that is a gift. And I mean this. I did not earn it. I did not deserve it. I did not become worthy of it any more than anyone that is in this room, or any less than anyone that is out there dying of this illness. Do you know what I'm saying? And I talk about that. And there are some people who might be a little pedantic, not like me, who are like, actually, Paige, it says a price had to be paid. Yeah, do you know what the price that I am paying to receive the gift is? It says it meant destruction of self-centeredness. The price that I am paying to receive the gift is a part of the gift. Do you know what I mean? I am drowning in self-centeredness. It is the bondage of self, like I'm wrapped up in me and it's turning into a noose. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm paying, the price I'm paying is the gift. And it says, I must turn in all things to the capital F, capital L, Father of the light who presides over us all. And I had a sponsee one time that said, Paige, how do you demonstrate willingness? How do you demonstrate willingness to have that defect removed? And that was the line that just jumped out at me. Turning in all things to that power. Turning in all things to that power which is God. That is how I demonstrate willingness to be a different person. Capital F, capital L, Father of light. And if you're like, I got some daddy issues, yeah, I got my daddy issues come in buckets. I'm with you. Buckets is my unit of measurement for most things. Sponsees, buckets of them. Reservations, I had buckets. The other day I thought I was classy and I had something in baskets. I can't remember what I put in baskets, but you know. But you don't have to use that. But I love the idea of Father of light. Because light is this beautiful metaphor that we see all over this book. And light is not what I see. It's not just what I see. Light is the way in which I see. And as I begin to awaken and as I begin to grow spiritually, how I see the world changes. Do you know what I'm saying? And so I love Father of Light. So Bill goes on to say, these were revolutionary and drastic proposals, which, by the way, if you're having a look at the 12 steps on the wall or on the Zoom screen or in the book, and you're like, girl, that's pretty drastic. Yeah, that's fair. I think we all felt that way. Absolutely. Like, oh, you want me to do what? And he says, but the moment I fully accepted them, the effect was electric. And what does it mean to fully accept? What that means is the moment he did them, he took the actions, the moment spiritual awakening. What we're getting into is Bill Wilson's white light spiritual awakening. That's what we're talking about. These were revolutionary and drastic proposals, but the moment I fully accepted them, the effect was electric. There was a sense of victory, followed by such a peace and serenity as I had never known. There was utter confidence. I felt lifted up as though the great clean wind of a mountaintop blew through and through. God comes to most men gradually, but his impact on me was sudden and profound. And so this is Bill Wilson's white light spiritual experience. And I don't know where I put my Lois Remembers. That was one of the things. Oh, so I was going to read it out of Lois Remembers, but I'm not, because I don't know where I put it. Rude of me. I'm like, I got Bobby B, The Untold Story of AA's Fantastic Communicant, right? Right. It's a good one. She's a fantastic communicator. I bet she knew where her I know she wouldn't have had a copy of Lois Remembers, but I'm just gonna make the joke. I bet she would have known where Lois Remembers is. So I grabbed I grabbed the wrong book. Welcome everyone. So but a couple things that I want to talk about Bill Wilson's spiritual experience is sometimes we have a look at this. Um, Rob will absolutely put that in the chat for you. Uh, so what we're talking about is often we hear this experience and we think, oh, that we can't possibly have an experience like that. And what I will say is one of my favorite sentences in the book, nonsense, period. I wish it was nonsense, exclamation mark, but one of my favorite sentences, nonsense, period. But let's have a look at the elements of Bill Wilson's white light spiritual experience. An electric effect, a sense of victory, peace and serenity, utter confidence, a feeling of being lifted up. That's a spiritual awakening. And there's nothing to like, well, girl, what are you on about? Right? Like, there's nothing to, how much belladonna were you taking there, Bill? There's nothing too crazy about that. But one of the things that I also want to emphasize is that the spiritual awakening and the awakenings that I have are absolutely none of my business. And there wasn't a time in my life that I sold the power of alcohol short. There was not a time in my life that I sold the power of crack cocaine short. There was not a time in my life that I ever sold that power short. So why would I sell the power of God short? The title she's asking for is Bobby B, the untold story of AA's fantastic communicator. So somebody will have to put that in the chat slower than I can say it. Thank you. All good. I just thought I'd be helpful. If you ever have any questions or comments or would like to see me go on a tangent, you just put that in the chat and off we go. It'll be a journey. Choo-choo. Where we go, I don't know. But the spiritual experience that I have is absolutely none of my business. And I would have sold myself short if I listened to people in rooms that were like, oh, well, the best you could have is of the educational variety. I don't know people who've had experiences like Bill. Nonsense, nonsense. I have had powerful spiritual experiences. Not quite like Bill, but more like Fitz. I've had some Fitz Mayo spiritual experiences. I have had powerful spiritual experiences. Powerful. And what happens is a lot of times we end up in rooms with people that are, happy to be sober. And I did like a 4-step a while ago, and I'm happy to be. No, F that. Like, I wasn't after that in the bottle. I wasn't after a subpar experience in the bottle. I was after that experience. I was after the experience in the pipe. I'm after that experience with God. And what happens is if I work this thing quickly and thoroughly, we have experiences. It is not most people have the educational variety. And that's a whole other thing about how that's not in the book, William James Varieties of Religious Experience. Ooh, fun fact when we get there. Just stir in the pot, not too hard because I don't like controversy because conflict makes me sweaty and uncomfortable. But only a little stirring of the pot. But really, when I work with people, when we go through this work, we go quickly, we go thoroughly. There are experiences that happen that are powerful, that are a lot closer to Bill's than, well, I just don't drink just for today. You know what I'm saying? Powerful experiences. And so I gotta have them. And so Bill Wilson, what he had is his type of a spiritual experience. Bill's experience in particular was not in the book, Varieties of Religious Experience, as in the book predated Bill Wilson's spiritual experience. But the type of experience he had absolutely is in the book Varieties of Religious Experience. It is described as a spiritual experience of the luminous variety, where there is a white light. So this was a thing that frickin' happened. Now, how Bill Wilson, Genuinely, I'm like, where the heck did I put my girl Lois remembers? I was gonna read it. I think it's under some things. I'm just, oh, oh, no, that's not it. Okay, we're not reading it because I can't find it. And by the time I find it, I'll find it, then I have to find the page. But I'll tell you about what happened. So Bill Wilson, he takes the actions of these steps. And then in his mind's eye, he sees himself on top of this mountain. And he feels like this wind, not of air, but of spirit that flows through him. And like that's a powerful experience. But here's the thing, when we talk about a spiritual experience, we know the quality of an experience by the effects of it. And the effects that he had, we're going to talk about here in a little bit. We're going to talk about that Bill Wilson wasn't just tripping on belladonna, that he had a powerful experience based on the effects of that experience. But something that is really incredible is Bill Wilson's paternal grandfather, so his dad's dad, had a drinking problem. And we spoke about him a little bit earlier. And his dad climbed this mountain in Vermont. Now, it's Mount Aeolus, and I'm not pronouncing it perfectly. I was calling it Mount Aurelius, which is not what it's called, and it's in Vermont. And I think I was saying it was in the state of New York for a while. I'm like, geography is one of the few things that I get right, and I think I got that bad boy wrong. So Bill Wilson's grandfather climbed to the top of Mount Aurelius. Now, if we have any other Albertans here, you're like, mountain. So he climbed a hill. That's right. We get snobby about our mountains. We got the Rockies. But he climbs to this top of the mountain, Bill Wilson's grandfather. And he has a powerful spiritual awakening. And from that moment, his grandfather stayed sober. And I think it's like no coincidence. I think it's the power of God that Bill Wilson imagines that he's on a mountain and visualizes that he's on a mountain. But when he talks about that wind that blew through him, not of air, but of spirit. So the word Aeolus, Aeolus was a Greek god. And he was attributed to different things at different times, but primarily that Greek god was the god of the wind. How freaking cool is that? Do you know what I mean? That is cool as all heck. By the way, you can absolutely see that I had to look up those things in my search history. Have a full judgment of what my tabs are. I don't know. All right. So that is Bill Wilson's spiritual experience. And it says, for a moment, I was alarmed and called my friend the doctor. So he calls up Dr. Silkworth to ask if I were still sane. He listened in wonder as I talked. Finally, he shook his head, saying, something has happened to you I don't understand, but you had better hang on to it. Anything is better than the way you were. The good doctor now sees many men who have had such experiences. He knows that they are real. While I lay in the hospital, the thought came that there were thousands of hopeless alcoholics who might be glad to have what had been so freely given me. Perhaps I could help some of them. They, in turn, might work with others. And I'm a bit of a nerd. I know that's a surprise to absolutely no one here, but I am a bit of a nerd. And I like seeking spiritually in a variety of faith traditions. And in everything that I've found, the most sure sign of a spiritual awakening is the desire to go help somebody else. So we know Bill Wilson wasn't just having a bit of a woohoo moment because he had this profound desire to carry this message to others. And you can, if you're writing in your book, which is what I hear all the cool kids are doing, you can make a little note that that is Bill's vision. Bill Wilson has this vision. And what is incredible is we're going to see that that vision is going to be given to us. We're going to see it in the chapter, A Vision for You. That's what that chapter is about. The vision of one of us, alcoholic, addict, codependent, overeater, anorexic, bulimic, gambler, whatever brings you to this study. One of us carrying this message to another, and the fellowship that grows as a result of that action. That's what a vision for you is all about. So, vision, woo! It says, my friend had emphasized with emphasis, but the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable. I can't not make that joke. There's something wrong with me. My friend emphasized the absolute necessity. Absolute necessity. So we're not mincing words here. Absolute necessity. I need of demonstrating these principles in all my affairs. I want to emphasize demonstrating. That's not me telling you about them. That's not me talking about them at a meeting. That is not me thinking, what a great idea that would be to have some love and tolerance and, you know what I mean? Demonstrating these principles in all my affairs. That is not like, oh, we have affairs. No, 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 no. All areas of my life. That's what we're talking about. And so what does that mean? And I take a bit of a stance that not a lot of people take. I don't know if I don't know, but I'm like, it's my slightly controversial hot take. Not super controversial, because I want people to like me, because if they don't, I get all sweaty. Actually, that's gotten a lot better. But that idea that the spiritual principles are not nebulous concepts behind the steps. The spiritual principles are the tangible actions of the steps, because that is something that I can demonstrate. If you're like me, and sometimes has a hard time just throwing nebulous ideas at things, and like, or the one I always use is like, all right, stuck in traffic, let's throw out some tolerance. I can't pull tolerance out of my butt. I need the tolerance of God to flow through me. How do I get there? Prayer. Step 10. Do you know what I mean? Turn my thoughts to those I can help. That's how I get there. I pray. So it's of the utmost importance that what I am doing is living this way of life in all areas of my life. Does that make sense? And it says, particularly was it imperative. Imperative is of the utmost importance to work with others as he had worked with me. Sponsorship. So also, if by chance there's someone here that is a bit pedantic, I was going to say our history husband isn't here, so I would be joking about him if he was. I'd be like, which is unfortunate because I wanted to tease him. If you're a little bit pedantic, you might point out that, hey, the word sponsorship, that's not found in the first 164 pages. And I will absolutely agree with you. But the job description sure as heck does. It's all over the place. We've had the job description of sponsorship all the way from the like preface and forwards onward. It's all over the place. So that's there. Also, similarly, the word surrender not found. Just while we're on this pathway of pedantry, surrender isn't, but the capitulate is, which is just a fancier word for surrender. I know, capitulate, but also the directions on how to do it certainly are. Also, I had a theory. Why is surrender not found? By the way, it's a theory. Rob might be like, Paige, it's actually this reason. I'm just throwing out ideas. Rob probably actually knows. We should ask Rob. But my theory is that surrender is not found so much in the big book because it was a heavy concept in the Oxford group. It was a really, really, really heavy concept that yeah, prospect is, yeah, prospect for sponsee, that's all over the place. Yeah, absolutely. Job description is there. Doesn't matter what I call it, right? But surrender was a heavy, heavy principle in the Oxford group. So probably to create some separation. Pew, pew. That didn't require a pew pew, but you got one anyways. Anywho, so so it says, faith without works was dead. Now, this is a theme that we're going to see throughout this book. Faith without works was dead. What does that mean? What that means is belief. Belief in the power of God, belief in the power of AA or CA or OA or GA or, whatever, DAA, belief in the power of God or 12 steps or the 12-step fellowship, belief without action. And the works is the 12 steps as a way of life. That's what we're talking about, was dead. What that means is belief without action, and I will get drunk again. Belief without action, and I will relapse. Belief without all these 12 steps as a way of life, I will relapse. Faith without works was dead. That's what it means. And he said, how appallingly true, aren't we examples of that, for the alcoholic? For if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others. I'm going to just pause right there because we found another hill for me to die upon. So my 3 hills. 1, yes, you can recover. Yes, you can. I love you. Yes, you can. That's 1 hill. 2 hills, absolutely. Meditation existed in the 1930s and it didn't mean thinking. Absolutely. Dying on that hill. I'm there. Come at me, bro. 3rd hill, that what we want to emphasize is spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. It is not progress, not perfection. It is spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection, because that is what I need to focus on. And it right there, perfect and enlarge his spiritual life. It's pointing to, I aim for spiritual perfection. We're not getting anywhere close to that, but I aim for that. Spiritual progress. It's not about how am I progressing in my job, in my career, in my family, in my bank account, in acquiring things, acquiring power, prestige, influence. It's not about that, because none of that could keep me sober. It is about how am I progressing in the spiritual way of life. So it says, if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge, see, this is not a set it and forget it deal. I've got to continue to grow and to seek through his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others. The work is the work of these 12 steps as a way of life. That's the work. And the self-sacrifice for others, that's going to be sponsorship. I mean, of course, more than sponsorship, but sponsorship. Self-sacrifice for others, to show up in selfless service to our families at work and all the places that we show up to show up in that way. And that's what we're here to do. It says he could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. Certain. There will be trials and low spots. And the trials and low spots are not because I'm an alcoholic, not because I'm a drug addict, not because I'm in recovery, not because I'm anything other than a human being. And trials and low spots are part of the human condition. There will be trials and low spots. To be a human being is to experience grief and pain and loss and suffering. And it's important when we go into the world to remember that. To be a human being is to experience grief and loss and pain and suffering. So everyone that I come in contact with is going to have that experience of grief and loss and pain and suffering. And one of the other things that I'll point out just while I'm here is that you will never look into the eyes of somebody God does not love. And that does not mean that you walk around like this. God's not happy with you. That's also just not me avoiding eye contact, because I'm not good with eye contact. I have to be conscientious with it. But there's not God loves us, and we know that through experience, because look at us. We're a bunch of people who were doomed to die from this illness, and here we are sober and helping others, So he could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead if he did not continue this as a way of life and help others. He would surely drink again. That's important. Before I come into the rooms of 12 steps, there is one reason for relapse. Before I come into the rooms, one reason and only one reason. And it is the inevitability of the relapse. I will drink again. I will use again. I will act out in that behavior again. I will. After I come to the rooms of 12 step, there's 2. The inevitability of the relapse, because I'm going to, and a failure to grow spiritually. It's never what happened. It is always what didn't happen, what stopped happening, That's why. Because to relapse is the inevitable state for an alcoholic or a drug addict or a compulsive whatever brings you to the study. That is inevitable. So if he did not work, he would surely drink again. And if he drank, he would surely die. And I was at a meeting the other day with somebody who was not happy. He was drowning in his own pain and suffering and misery. And he was like, well, that's a contradiction in the book because I drank again and I didn't die. And he, man, you could, and this used to be me. I would suck the energy out of a room. That's who I was. The energy was sucked out of the room. He was so angry. And I was like, ooh, there's more than one death. I didn't tell him this because he was not receptive to my earlier suggestion of like, would you like some help doing inventory on that? He was not receptive. Uh, he was not happy with me. But like, there is more than one type of death. And the death that he experienced was not a physical death. Based on the anger and pain that he was radiating, man, he was experiencing some spiritual and emotional death. So don't get stuck in that idea of things being just super literal, which I do, which is like to drink, it would surely die. Man, before I die physically, I'm going to die inside. I'm going to die many deaths before I finally die. And it says, then faith would be dead indeed. With us, it is just like that. That is our experience. So what the thrust of what we're saying is, I've got to continue to do this. It goes on to say, my wife and I abandoned ourselves with enthusiasm. The word enthusiasm, its etymological origin. I got 2 minutes left and I'm going on an etymology tangent. Let you see how terrible I am at managing time. 2 minutes left. We're talking about etymology. Is Greek. And just like the mountain, it's Greek. And it means, enthusiasm means to be filled with God's Spirit. And it says, my wife and I abandon ourselves with enthusiasm to the idea of helping other alcoholics to a solution of their problems. Man, for me, that is a benchmark line. That is a standard that I want to hold myself to. Am I abandoning myself? I'm having that leap of faith to the idea with enthusiasm, to the idea of helping others to a solution of their problem, which is to say, 12-stepping other people, offering them this way of life, offering them these steps, to abandon myself with enthusiasm to that. Man, that's the standard I want to have. I don't want to have to begrudgingly saunter into sponsorship, but I'll be honest, if I'm begrudgingly sauntering into sponsorship, if I do that with consistency, because that's what willingness is, begrudgingly sauntering into sponsorship is willingness. Doesn't look like wee, but that enthusiasm will come. It will come. I've got to do it. So it says it was fortunate for my business associates remained. Oh, and I just want to point out real quick to a solution of their problems. We got a solution. The solution is the spiritual awakening. And again, we see problems, not just the main problem of my alcoholism, my addiction, my compulsive, whatever brings you to this study. It says, it was fortunate for my old business associates remained skeptical for a year and a half, during which I found little work. Bill Wilson was never financially successful at the same level he had been on page 3 ever again. And it says, I was not too well at the time, and I was plagued by waves of self-pity and resentment. This sometimes nearly drove me back to drink. Whoa, 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 whoa. Page 14. It was a sense of victory, followed by such a peace and serenity as I had ever known. The great wind of a mountaintop blew through and through. Page 15, across the page, plagued by waves of self-pity and resentment that nearly drove me back to drink. This is not a set it and forget it program. I cannot stay well in an old experience. I cannot stay well on work that I did last week, just like I couldn't stay well on a turkey dinner I had last week. I didn't have a turkey dinner, but I know, America, it's coming up for you. Yeah, it's coming up this week. Hang out with me. I'll be doing a lot. I'll be doing a lot on Thursday. So if you try to avoid the family, come spend time with me. And it says, but I soon found that when all other measures failed, work with another alcoholic would save the day. When nothing else is working, go help somebody else. This is not a self-help program. This is a God helps me and I help others program. That's what this is. Many times I've gone to my old hospital in despair When I am coming to the end of myself, go help someone else. On talking to a man there, I would be amazingly lifted up. Isn't that a beautiful similarity to what happened to him in his white light spiritual experience? Lifted up and set on my feet. It is a design for living. Design for living is way of life that works in rough going. This works when life hits. This works when the world is falling apart. This works when I am in pain and in suffering. This works. That's why we do this. It works. But I've got to do it. And I've then got to be diligent in taking the actions on a daily basis and helping others. That's 2 minutes over, so I will be quiet and stop the recording and we can wrap it up with a prayer. Alrighty.